Hey everybody, it's Ashley. Welcome back to my channel, The City-Stead Kitchen. If you were here for my last video, we talked all about sweet potatoes, and today we're still going to talk about sweet potatoes. I decided to do one more video, or a second video, on sweet potatoes because there's so many recipes that are actually desserts, treats, but I think these recipes would just make really good snacks too. So today we are going to use a couple different types of sweet potatoes. The last video we just used regular ones. This one, we've got some purple ones. There's lots of recipes out there that call for purple sweet potatoes. And some of the times you'll find them being super vibrantly colored. And I found that that is actually because people buy things like this, which I was thinking was like a sweet potato extract. Technically, it might be, but this actually has food coloring in it and sweet potato imitation flavor, artificial sweet potato flavor. So I'm just not going to use it. If my desserts aren't quite as vibrant, that's going to be okay because I'd rather avoid that. A lot of the sweet potato recipes that I found called for a lot less sugar than one that did not call for sweet potatoes, but was sort of a similar recipe. That's why I think these recipes would make really good snacks too. We're gonna do 4 different recipes. 2 are going to be cookies, 1 is gonna be a brownie, and the other one is going to be a quick bread. Now, I'm not sure if these recipes tend to be a little healthier because people who are looking to put sweet potatoes in their treats tend to look for recipes that are, or tend to make recipes that are just healthier in general and have less sugar, or if they just have less sugar because of the sweet potatoes because they are so sweet. Either way, they are healthier because overall there's less added sugar. If you want to see everything where I talk more at length about sweet potatoes and various things, including the nutrition, go check out the last sweet potato video, which of course will be linked if you want to see it. Otherwise, I'm really excited to get to these recipes, so let's just get right to them. We're gonna get going on the healthy sweet potato quick bread first. The only ingredient I don't have that it calls for is dried cranberries, so I'm gonna throw in a couple goji berries that we have just because we have them, even though it's not near the amount. So this is gonna call for some flour. It calls for a whole wheat pastry flour, but I do not have that. I'm gonna combine some ground up oats with some regular flour. We put our flours in here. We're going to put in 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda. And this is usually pretty clumpy, so I always like to run it through a little sifter. And then 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. We're gonna go in with 1 teaspoon dried ginger, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. And then we'll go ahead and get this stirred up. From here, we'll add 1/2 cup of sugar. The recipe calls for coconut sugar, but we don't have it. So we are going to use just regular, this is organic, unbleached cane sugar. You can tell it's unbleached and unprocessed because it's sort of light tan color instead of white. Okay, so now we're gonna go in with our wet ingredients. We're gonna throw in 2 eggs. And then 1/3 cup of buttermilk. And I'm gonna use flax milk and create my own buttermilk. I'm just gonna do this right here and then set it aside. 1/3 cup. This does call for olive oil, but I have found that you can pretty easily substitute your oil for yogurt. And I prefer to do that whenever I can. So I'm just gonna use some plain organic Greek yogurt. Any kind of yogurt would work. Plain is nice just because it doesn't add more sweetness or any extra flavorings of any kind. So it calls for 1/3 cup. So I will do about that. The Greek yogurt also adds extra protein, which makes these healthier as well. So I was trying to show that I was peeling this, but it was totally off camera. So I will show you how easy it is when we do one of our other recipes, but I just took the skin off. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to bake the sweet potatoes is because of this caramelization that happens. And it's so nice. And you can easily mash this with a fork and it mashes up super, super well. I don't think that a food processor would be necessary whatsoever to make this a better texture. The one thing that the baking does is it does add a little bit of darker color, but I am totally okay with that because I feel like that's just adding really nice flavor. So this recipe calls for 1 cup of the sweet potato. This is 3/4 cup, so we will keep it and call that a cup. Let's throw these goji berries in too. This is just a couple, but they'll be like a little surprise. Get this mixed up. And I hope this isn't too dry. If it is, if I feel like it's a little too thick, I'm gonna add just a little bit more of the milk. And part of that might be because we added yogurt instead of the oil, but usually it doesn't really make that big of a difference. So it's not too bad. I'm gonna add just a teeny bit of this milk. One thing that I was really drawn to with this recipe is it has a really fun topping that we'll show you in just a minute. Okay, that's much better. There we go. Now you can make this in any kind of pan you want. A lot of times I like to make bread in 8x8 pans because it bakes so nicely, but we are going to use this one for brownies today. So we are going to use the actual loaf pan for this. And I put a little parchment paper in there. You wouldn't have to, but I think it's just going to make it easier to lift it out when we're done. I did spray it before that. So just finish this. So I'm just going to kind of smoothen this out. All right, now we're just going to mix together our topping. So in our bowl for the topping, we mix together, or we put in our bowl some oats. I have quick oats. I have not bought quick oats in a long time, but that's all I have right now. And pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, and a little bit of that organic cane sugar. We are just going to put this right on top. We're also going to add just a little bit of some flaky salt. This is the brand that I have, and it's just going to be a super thin layer over the top. All right, now this is ready for the oven. This is actually the one recipe that cooks the longest, so I wanted to get that done. We'll go ahead and get this in and get started on our next recipe. Okay, so this next recipe is going to be brown butter white chocolate chip purple sweet potato cookies. Now, that is quite the tongue twister. I'm gonna get our butter browning first, and then we'll get our dry ingredients mixed up while that is melting. So over here, I have our flour in the bowl. We're gonna need a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, just a little bit of salt, 1/4 of a teaspoon. We're just going to mix this together now. And we can just wait on this until our butter is done browning, and it's already starting to melt a little bit. Okay, our butter is almost melted here. I'm going to turn the heat down on it. We don't want it to burn, we just kind of want it to start to brown. But I'm not a professional on browning butter, so we're just going to see how this turns out. Okay, I'm going to take this off now. When I tilt it, you can kind of see the browning happening there. And I'm going to call that good. So we're just going to set this aside and let it cool down. While your butter cools a little bit, we will just mix together our sugars and then add our butter and go ahead and mix. So now we're going to peel our purple sweet potato. And so I'll get this on camera for you. It's so easy because that skin is already separated from the actual potato. Although this is even a little harder than the other ones. The other ones were so easy. But it's a lot easier to work with if you allow it to cool down instead of trying to handle it while it's super hot. I love making recipes that use really nutritious food for you in ways that otherwise the food would maybe be not as nutritious. And I'm super excited about all these recipes. I'm gonna go ahead and use a little paring knife to kind of get that bottom part of the skin removed. And then just like with our regular sweet potato, we're gonna go ahead and mash this. Look at how beautifully vibrant that purple potato is. Part of what makes food delicious to us is the way it looks. There is a science behind it. And when we can have food that looks super, super vibrant and appealing to our eyes, we think it tastes better. Now, this recipe, I feel a little bit like a broken record when I say this. I'm diverging from the recipe. Again, I don't want to add that food coloring, so we're just going to use the regular potato, and it's probably not going to be as vibrant, but we're just going to go with it. And it calls for this stuff called ubi halaya, and I could very well be pronouncing that incorrectly, but basically what it is, it's a combination of purple sweet potato with things like evaporated milk, sweetened condensed milk, and some other sugars and things like that. And to be honest with you, I'm a little bit too lazy to go through that step. So I figured there's a lot of sweetness in here already, and we're just going to put the potato in, and that's going to be good enough. So let's use a good 1/4 cup. That's probably more like 1/3. A stand mixer probably would be really nice for this. And I realize that a lot of this color is going to be diluted in this, but that's okay. Oh, it smells so caramely. We're going to add a little vanilla extract. I usually end up putting more of that in than it calls for. I'm going to do a single egg. Get that mixed together. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and add the wet to the dry for the cookies. And because of that butter and the brown sugar, this definitely took on a more brown color, to be expected. Actually, before we get going here, I'm going to put our white chocolate chips in. Because you don't want to overmix things. It says a 1/2 cup. So whenever I'm making chocolate chip cookies, I actually do that as well. I add my chocolate chips and my flour at the exact same time, because then you really know that you're not going to overmix your batter. This also says to let it cool down, and that's because the butter was warm. So we're going to do that. I'm going to transfer it to the smaller bowl, and then we will just let that cool down and come back to it in just a little bit.
When getting these cookies ready for the oven, I grabbed 2 tablespoons or so of dough at a time and just rolled them. You want to make sure to give them a good 2 inches spacing and just fill up the pan, then they're ready to go in the oven.
Okay, for the brownies, we went ahead and got a couple things mixed here, or put in the bowl already. We put in some flour, and the recipe actually calls for gluten-free baking flour, which I happen to have. I just got this Costco, and I had it around, so I thought we'll just use it. So that's what the white is on the bottom. We added a little bit of baking powder, salt, cocoa powder, and I actually had protein powder that I thought I would add in place of half the cocoa powder. So we went ahead and did that. It was chocolate protein powder, so it's going to be a little bit of a divergence from the recipe already. So we're just going to go ahead and get this mixed up with our whisk.
Into the dry ingredients, we added almond butter and the sweet potato. I did bake our sweet potatoes yesterday for all these recipes, and it made it super easy today. They were already cooled down, ready to be peeled, and I didn't have to take the time to do it. You always can use leftover sweet potato for these recipes, or you could even make extra if you were having sweet potatoes in one of your meals, so you have extra for recipes like this. I'm using an 8-inch baking pan for these sweet potato brownies, and I just lightly buttered the bottom and sides of the pan. After smoothing the batter out and getting it into the corners, I'll lightly sprinkle some sea salt flakes on top before getting it in the oven.
The second cookie that we're going to make is going to be a soft baked sweet potato cookie, and these are going to have a frosting on top that is just made out of a little Greek yogurt. What am I doing? Okay, so we're actually going to put in some quick oats. This one specifically calls for quick oats. If you don't have quick oats, which are just regular oats, just a little bit more finely milled, you can go ahead and put some regular rolled oats through a food processor. You don't want to blend it into an oat flour. Just kind of want to break it up into a nice texture like that. It wouldn't take very long at all. And with the oats, we're going to put some coconut. We're going to put in a tablespoon of flax meal, half teaspoon of baking powder. We'll do a teaspoon of cinnamon in this. Okay, we are going to add our wet ingredients to the soft baked cookies. A couple tablespoons of syrup. You could use honey if you prefer honey. Okay, we added a little bit of olive oil. I added a little salt. The recipe does not call for it, but I thought it would be a good idea. And we added our sweet potato and our egg. We're going to go ahead and get this mixed up. Okay, so I just realized that I made a mistake. We were supposed to make an oat flour. We weren't supposed to use the quick oats as is. I happen to have some oats that are ground up, so I'm going to throw some of those in here. It won't need as much as it originally called for because those oats are already in there. So we'll just put a little bit and see how it goes. This will be like a double oat cookie. I'm going to put a little bit more in so it's not sticky. That should do it.
For the soft baked sweet potato cookies, I mixed together a super simple glaze made from Greek yogurt, a pinch of salt, vanilla extract, and some sweetness.
Well, we just finished getting all this stuff put on a plate to sample and enjoy, and it is all so, so good. Any one of these recipes, I would highly recommend. They're so great, such a great way to get vegetables into a treat. This bread is so incredibly moist, so are the brownies. Of all the mistakes I've made today, I think that these turned out incredible. I will write the recipes out and link them all directly. And even these cookies, they're so good. These taste amazing, amazing. They will all be linked. I will put the recipe as I did it because I can't speak for the recipe the way I didn't do it. So it'll all be kind of done the way I did it. As far as these cookies, I'm not sure. Maybe I'll write these out because I didn't grind up the oats into a flour. Maybe I'll just write that part as is. If you do check out those recipes while you're at the website, I have other great resources on things that you can do with sweet potatoes and lots of other single ingredients. Thank you for being here. If you want to see more videos like this, please let me know in the comments. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we will see you soon.